some simple color correction to your DSLR footage. So first and foremost, you know, we have the sequence open here. I actually have a different layout here. There is a standard layout you can use in Premiere Pro that you can do color correction in. So I'd go to Window, Workspaces, then go to Color. And then it'll pop up a bunch of stuff once you get it, once it's all here. And then you have all your things you need, right? So it's still in a two window format, like an editing format, but it brings up this panel right here, which is Lumetri Color, which is a really great tool for Premiere Pro. And then over here you have your scopes, which is what I like to use. If you don't have scopes pulled up, it should automatically pull up the scopes. But if for some reason it doesn't, then you want to go to Window, and then you can look for, if I can find it here, Lumetri Scopes. So make sure that's popped up, and the Lumetri Color thing, make sure these two things are up. And with this, you can actually go through, I like to use the vector scope right here, or sorry, the waveform, but there's other ones too, like the vector scope if you're into that. Histogram is also pretty good too if you're used to doing like photography. The histogram is nice. There's also an RGB parade, which is I like to use that one as well from time to time, so I can see where my colors are, and I can get into that a little bit more as we go along. But essentially, you kind of want all these to kind of sort of match a little bit. So anyway, let me go back to the waveform because it's one I am the most comfortable with at this moment. Actually, you know what? We'll go with both of them here because they kind of do the same thing, except for the parade separates all of them out, and this is sort of a mixed color together. So here you go. We have video of me yapping, and there are lots of things going on here. This one's actually already pretty white balanced. So let me find a shot that isn't as white balanced. It is a little cold meaning like blue colors. I want to say there was a shot up here where the light changed, like, so you can see right here the color is different from right here. See, it's a little bit colder here. I actually like this one better, but let's just say for the sake of this, say you've shot some video and it's a little off. It's like there's extreme cases, right? And then there's cases where it's just a little off. It doesn't look like as natural as you want it to look. So with this, what you want to do is, let me actually just separate this out here. You can see here that the blue is a lot higher than everything else here. And what it's looking at right here, this, if you see these peaks and valleys, this is actually looking at the video from left to right. So you can see right over here is where there's a lot of light, so that's why it's high. And then right over here it's dark, that's why it's low. And what you want to do to actually bring balance to all this is to you can, you know, obviously lower your exposure and that sort of thing, and you can you know, as you can see as I raise the exposure, it brightens everything up, but you start losing my face here, and then we're gonna bring it back down. So one general thing, let's kick off first here. Let's just go with lighting. So it is a little dark in the lows here, and the lighting's just kind of, it's good, but it's not great. And sometimes whenever you have like a flat file, let's see if we can find one on this. Luckily I don't have anything flat over here. So like this one right here, for instance, this shot right here, you see how everything's kind of below this 100 line or this 90 line. We want to try to bring most of it up, and you see how the red's off too as well. So we want to kind of bring everything up to where it's touching between 90 and 100. I see that my red is still pretty high, but this is just a general rule of thumb. You got to kind of use your eyeballs as well. But you want all your highs, your brights, to go above that 90 line, and just watch all your highlights too, just to kind of be careful. You can raise the exposure, or if you like the exposure of a lot of things, you can just do the highlights. So if I do the highlights here, it'll actually bring I want to say that white, so white, you can bring it up higher. It'll just bring the highlights up higher, right? So if I just want to focus on the brights, it'll focus just the brights and leave the darks alone. And then same thing with the whites, right? And then same thing goes for the shadows. Want to bring the shadows up, you can. and you can bring your blacks up. So highlights, and yeah, I'm trying to remember the difference here. It's different in here than it is in DaVinci Resolve, which I'm kind of used to doing, talking about it in there. But the highlights, I believe, has to do with the it's sort of the mid range of your highs, if that makes sense. And then the whites are the top ranges. So you can see here, you see the top of the peaks here are moving more when I do the whites. And then when I do the highlights, it's moving more of the middle of the whites. So like in this area, right? So it's kind of like the middle ground between your shadows and your highlights. It's kind of the mid, we call it the mids. They don't call it mids on here. They just have highlights and shadows. And then your blacks are obviously going to be the bottom of your peaks here. And generally for the blacks, you want the blacks to not be all the way down here because you lose information. See how it's starting to crunch out here? We don't want that. We want to bring it in right in here. I usually like to bring it between 10 and 0, around the 5 mark. Sometimes, depending on the style of video, you can go above 10, but even then it starts to kind of get a little bit not black enough. So just right below 10. Again, use your eyeballs. Right below 10, you can see it's still black without losing the fact that it's black, you know. And then shadows, play with those to kind of brighten up things. And then obviously you need to go back in. Once you play with this stuff, you need to actually dial some other stuff back down because you brought other levels back up. It's sort of this back and forth dance. Just play with it. I wouldn't worry about contrast too much. That'll actually affect everything. It pulls your whites and your blacks apart. You can play with that to get more contrast or less. Don't go too contrasty because that looks terrible. But just, you know, this one right here, you just kind of just fandangle it a little bit. And if you're recording a color profile that's in camera, I wouldn't worry too much. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's how I'd balance light. So once I balance light, you can go in and start sort of balancing your color. And then again, this one's just it's still too bright. So I'm gonna just bring it back down. That was just for the sake of an example. So here you can actually see I have a white shirt. Sometimes you don't have white, but we can go here, hit this little thing, and then click on it, and that'll bring your whites down. You can see this red is still a little high. I don't know what it's reading. It's reading my hands. Let me see if I can bring that over. Yeah, see, I don't want that to be. See, now I look like super cold. So the red's fine. Let me actually go to waveform here. You can see my red's still high. It must be reading my face. That's probably what it is. It says my red is because I have, you know, the blood in your face is red. There are tricks to get more nuanced with this, but for now, if you have something white, just use this little picker and go boom, and it'll balance it out, the white. And you can even play with this a little bit more. Say, like, I like to look at facial, like skin tone, more than I like to look at the actual whiteness. So if I feel like, oh man, this skin tone's terrible, I usually like to balance for the skin tone. So I'm like, oh, I need some more blood in my veins. Let me put some more red back into it. I'm looking a little green. Let me take the green out. See, like right now you can see it's kind of green. You'll take the green out and that sort of thing. Again, my face is still high. The highlights are too high. I don't like it. I don't like it. But like I said, this is just for the sake of an example. Here, there we go. Now we got the detail back in the face. Then we can bring up the whites. Again, this is just like a back and forth, man. I could do this all day long. So the main thing is looking at these lows, looking at these highs, looking at the overall balance of your reds. If you think that if all this were, you know, if you were to pump up the red on this, like boom and boom, then, you know, your red values would be going crazy. You want to have some balance to it. And obviously if you're shooting like a red wall, it's all going to be red. So just be mindful of that. So if I were to take off this parade, then you can kind of see like the overall balance. And yeah, so one way to also, let me go back to this one over here, since we're kind of messing with that a little bit. You can see here, we need to see how there's this line here. It's just kind of flat bar across in the darks. We can bring up the shadows here to make it, see how you can start seeing me a little bit better now. Actually, I might actually bring up the exposure overall just a little bit because I don't want to lose my face. I didn't light up this stuff very good, but we do want to bring some of the shadows back just a little bit, just to get a little bit of color. And then The blacks are actually fine. I might bring them up just a hair. I might say like 3, because it's being kind of touchy right now. Maybe even 2. That way you kind of see that the blacks are over here and won't get grainy. So everything's looking pretty good color-wise. So you can see I brought it up. It's nice and, not nice and bright because it was a dark shot in general, but it's brighter. You can see my face better. And then, let's see, the color in my face is a little blue. So I'm going to just take away the blue. Just a little bit, didn't take much. And you can see now I got a little bit more blood in my face. So I like to lean on the side of, a little bit more blood to the face. And yeah, I'm not going to get, well, let me go ahead and get into curves here a little bit. You probably don't need it on this shot, but I like to make a nice S curve a lot with this sort of stuff so you can really start popping out the contrast. Yeah, I'm not going to do it this shot. This shot's already pretty contrasty enough. So don't worry about that. So there you have it. There is a rundown of sort of color correction and color grading. So I would go ahead and make sure the waveforms are all good, are looking good here. That you have your highs up here almost hitting 100 and not like blasting at 100. You don't want everything to be crunching up there. And then down here, you don't want everything. I try not to touch that 0 ever unless I have to. Just because it's, I don't know, just because screens are super contrasty nowadays anyway, and just kind of helps alleviate crunching too much in the black. So I like to leave it around like 5 if you see these numbers over here that are out of the way. So yeah, you don't want it to be like all crunched out down there. So you want nice and level, a full spectrum across the board. And the colors, I'm not gonna get too much in that. You just use your eye, and if there's white, hit white, and then add a little blood back into the veins. Play with this. If it is, say, let's say we add like a LUT like this. Ooh, that one's too much. All right. Anyway, I don't have any. Let me see if I have any actual bad footage anywhere. Okay, this one's kind of blue. So let's just do this one from the beginning here. You can see you probably need to bring up the exposure a little bit because this is kind of low. These are kind of low. This area is low, so we'll bring it up just a touch. And then the highs look good. You can see my face is here. It's looking pretty good. If I go any higher, it's going to start blowing me out. Actually, I can probably go a little bit higher. As you can see, it's starting to bring my face in, which this is my face right here, which is, that's sort of like the area where my face is. Bring that up. Shadow, the blacks, I want to bring up just a hair. Shadows, do I want to bring the shadows up? Sure, we'll bring it up if we want it to. If we want it moody, we can keep it moody. Or we can bring it down. Highlights, I just did that. Let's see, the whites, don't want the whites to go any higher. Nah, whites look good. I don't want it touching up here and losing anything. My face is a little blue. Let's add a little bit of red back into it. Let's see what else is missing. We don't want that. We don't want green. So yeah, that looks pretty good there. Yeah, I might can even add a little bit of saturation because I'm losing. Like I'm trying to put in red, and you can see it's not really affecting it too much. So sometimes you can put a little bit of saturation. Let's say 105, or let's just crank it and see, just to kind of add a little bit of color into my face. So somewhere in there, that'll kind of bring some of those reds out, the color out, the saturation will. So play a saturation, especially if you have a flat looking look and something looks like it needs some depth to the color. Don't go crazy with it. You don't look like a cartoon. That looks like an orange cheetah. Looks like a Cheeto now. So you want it to be, just put a little bit of blood. This is a subtle art form, man. So just tinker with it. Don't go crazy with it. If something's too far gone, say you shot something that's super red or super black, like actually all these are pretty good. As long as you shoot in camera. I know I had a lot of shifting lights going on here. Like right here is walking, talking, not too bad. It's a little blue, but it's bearable for the style of video that you're shooting. If you're shooting around doing, see, I corrected a little bit and it helped out. See how it made everything a little bit more red. So you just color correct the white here. Just play with the the values here. So I hope that was helpful. This is just a quick rundown on how to read the scopes, how to sort of look at, especially facial tones and things like that. And even in this one right here, you can even white balance off the wall because it's white. Sometimes you can white balance off the teeth. There are other tricks to white balance too, but I'm not going to get into it. It has to do with like masking out your white and looking at these blue, green, and red things and making them match. It's a whole thing. I'm happy to break it down for you if you want me to, but for now, learn how to read the scopes, learn how to read the highs and the lows and the mids, play with that, and then go from there. I like to use this. Some people like to use color wheels, but for now, if you're just doing run and gun stuff, quick client work, these right here are the best options. And then once you have it standardized and everything is kind of the same exposure, you can go in, actually, let me move this over so you can see it. You can go in and then you can copy and then, go to the next shot and then paste it onto the next shot. And you might need to bring up the levels a little bit depending on where it is, but everything is going to be the same settings as the shots before. That way you don't have to do it over and over for each shot. You just copy and paste it onto all the other shots. So hope that was helpful.